Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm talking about Jupiter retrograde through Scorpio, starting on the 9th of March and finishing on the 10th of July, and highlighting some of the key areas that this period is going to ask us to reevaluate. So with Jupiter in Scorpio, this is an entire year's period where you may find that the contents of the unconscious mind start coming to the surface, because a key area of work that Scorpio involves is making the unconscious conscious, i.e. going down to the deepest recesses of our minds and bringing to the light of awareness key areas or old patterns of behaviour or old emotional patterns that we've buried for a long time but are now come to the surface in order for us to face them and let them go. Now, when Jupiter is in direct motion, what can often happen is we end up with ego inflation, i.e. the ego starts getting out of control, it starts hijacking whatever key plans or long-term goals we have and tries to bring them under the control of the ego. So we can end up engaging in rather rash behaviour or impulsive behaviour where we don't really think about the consequences. We're going around with blind optimism and seeing or not really thinking about the big picture, because we're so focused on the immediate moment or trying to satisfy our appetites, we don't really think about the long-term issues. Now, during the next 4 months, Jupiter retrograde brings about ego deflation. So this is where the constant drive towards egoic desires starts to get thwarted as such. Not by Jupiter itself, it's just Jupiter retrograde is like a corrective mechanism. It's about slowing the mind down or turning all that expansive energy inwards instead of outwards in order for us to reach greater depths within ourselves and to allow us to cultivate greater wisdom. Because with Jupiter retrograde, it's about taking all of that expansive energy that we've been trying to commit to projects and potentially wearing ourselves too thin, and turning all of that expansive energy inwards so that our external projects may cease any forward motion for the time being, but this is a period where our internal world may come alive. Now, a key challenge or key aspect that Jupiter retrograde involves is about getting in touch with our own innate sense of justice, our own innate sense of moral ethics, and asking us to query whether the goals that we've been setting are actually aligned with our true sense of what we believe is right and wrong. So in a way, Jupiter retrograde is like spending time listening to our conscience and evaluating things more carefully to see if what we're doing is actually right for who we are. So it's learning to listen to the voice of wisdom that we all have within us and listen to that voice of conscience and identifying, is what we're doing actually right for who we are? Do we truly believe it? Or are we just going along with the crowd? Or are we doing what other people are suggesting we should do because we fear being judged by other people if we don't go along with what everyone else is saying? So during Jupiter retrograde, it's a time for going inwards and looking at what is our own moral and ethical code? What do we believe is right or wrong? And is what we're doing right for us or wrong for us? And is what we're doing beneficial or wise? So in effect, it's a time for evaluating, because when Jupiter is direct and focused more on the ego, one thing that we can often inadvertently engage in is suppressing our own innate sense of what is right and wrong, or suppressing our own personal ethics in favour of going with the crowd. But Jupiter retrograde warns us against this and says, stop and check yourself. Do you really believe in the goals that you're following? Do you really believe that what everyone else is saying is right? Or are you just going along with the crowd because you're afraid of being judged or afraid of being ostracised for daring to think differently? So it's important that we slow down and check ourselves and check our own moral stance on things. Is what we're doing, or do we see it as ethical, and is it right? Now this is also time for, with Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio, this is also a time of where all that expansive energy turns inwards and aids us in the process of making the unconscious conscious. So we may experience our internal landscape quite vividly during this period, where old hurts may come to the surface, but when these happen, it's not necessarily the same things that have happened to us in the past are happening again. Certain things often mirror past events, but what they're doing is they're giving us an opportunity to assess, where are we holding on to old pain, where are we holding on to a sense of being a victim, and where do we give away our power to other people through lack of forgiveness. Because one of the key areas of spiritual alchemy that Scorpio involves is forgiveness. It's letting go of old hurts and learning to recognise that holding on to old pain isn't beneficial for us. It's not going to make us feel any more powerful. Feeling angry about something may make us feel stronger in the short term, but in the long run it actually undermines our health, it undermines our well-being, and we continue to give away our power to the people we perceive as having hurt us or wronged us. So during this time with Jupiter retrograde, that expansive energy may bring old emotional patterns to the surface. I mean, sometimes we may have thought that we've dealt with an issue, but we may have dealt with one layer of it, but now Jupiter retrograde is asking us to delve much deeper, to strip away the deeper layers that stand between who we think we are and who we really are. And this is an opportunity to also look at our relationship with power. Have we been conditioned to believe that being powerful is about how well you can control your external environment? Or do we see power as something that comes from within us, and that we all have the capacity to tap into this true power that lies at the core of who we are, but we can only do this through overcoming egoic conditioning and allowing the true self, if you like, to take the reins. So Jupiter retrograde is like a corrective period. It's where the desires of the ego become supplemented to the greater lessons of the soul or greater needs of the soul. So it's a period where the soul has a chance to reassert itself and to bring things back within the domain of our true selves, and evaluating what projects are we engaged in at the moment that aren't actually true to who we are, that we thought we wanted or thought we desired, but actually it's not right for who we are. So this is Jupiter's retrograde to Scorpio is a period of profound truth, and it's understanding that if we want to tap into our true power, if we want to understand our true potential, then the parts of the ego based on the past and based on old pain need to be allowed to die in order for them to be reborn like the phoenix. So it's a period of where we have the opportunity to achieve a great degree of internal transformation, but it's not forced upon us. We have to follow, or we have to engage with the process consciously and be willing to face a deeper recess of the mind, to be prepared to face old pain, and to have the courage to acknowledge it and transform it, rather than holding on to the victim narrative that we've used to avoid the transformational work so far. Because forgiveness isn't easy. It goes in direct contrast to goes directly against what our egos will tell us is strong. It's because the ego thinks we have to assert ourselves, or we have to have a pain acknowledged by other people, but at the end of the day we may never get an apology or recognition for the people who hurt us. More often than not, they may not even realise that they have hurt us in any way. And by holding on to these old grudges for things that happened possibly years ago, we're not doing ourselves any favour, and it just creates energetic change to the past. And whilst those chains are there, they limit how far we can go forwards. They limit our ability to expand properly or to achieve greater growth. So during this period, Jupiter retrograde asks us to get some perspective on things, to learn to take that step back and look at things from a wider perspective and try to see things through the lens of wisdom rather than egoic desire. So we may find that some of the forward progress we're making in the external environment may slow down and almost come to a complete standstill in some cases, but this is just so that we learn to take things more slowly and to allow a different approach to emerge that's based on wisdom rather than the impatience and impulsivity of the ego. So it's not necessarily a time where we have to can all of our projects or stop pursuing them, but we may need to reevaluate and think or observe where can we actually do things better, where can we allow natural growth and pursue the natural direction of things rather than trying to force things down our own way of seeing things. So if we have a limited perspective on things, then we'll only see a limited number of ways of achieving a certain outcome. But if we engage in the true work of Jupiter, which is expanding our horizons, expanding our perceptions, to see things from a higher and higher vantage point, so we're looking at the big picture and not just obsessing or looking at things through blinkered vision. If we continue to expand our perceptions through letting go of old ways of seeing things, letting go of old beliefs, and letting old emotional patterns die, we can get a much higher perspective on our current circumstances, and that higher perspective can open our minds up to new ways of seeing things, or open our perspective up to other ways of doing things than what we used to, but may actually be a wiser, more and a less energy intensive way of doing things. So it's going with the natural flow of things rather than trying to force things at our own to go down our own way of doing things. And so with Scorpio, Jupiter here is expanding anything it touches. So with Scorpio, it's about personal transformation. It's about moving beyond that blind desire for revenge or anything like that when we perceive to be hurt, and becoming more aware of what our subconscious drives are, what's going on in our subconscious minds, to understand where old behaviours may actually be sabotaging our desire for growth or desire for transformation. And it's also learning to see where our egoic desires pull us down. Where do they stop us from becoming the best version of ourselves? Where do we sabotage ourselves through through old emotional patterns or old thought patterns that undermine our well-being and continue to try and push the internal narrative that we're a victim of something? And that's not to say that people haven't hurt us in the past. They may well have done, but at the end of the day, the only ones who can free us from these old pains is ourselves. So if we truly want to empower ourselves and truly want to achieve a greater degree of personal freedom and a greater degree of expansion in our lives, then we have to do the hard work of going inwards and taking responsibility for releasing the past, through letting go of those chains that bind us to other people through unforgiveness. Because forgiveness may not be glamorous, and it may be perceived as weak by the ego, and it's what we're told is weak by society. But the fact is, forgiveness is an act of self-love. It's an act of self-liberation. And if we want to achieve true peace in our lives, then we have to make peace with our past. We have to become conscious of our own shadow and not suppress it or anything like that, but become aware of it, understand how it works and accept it, because there's a tremendous amount of power locked away in the shadow. But if we don't do the shadow work of Jupiter and Scorpio, and if we don't become conscious of our own egoic drives or old thought patterns and emotional patterns that undermine our efforts towards forward progress, then we're never going to achieve that true sense of freedom. So we owe it to ourselves to engage in the often hard and painful work of true forgiveness, where we let go of the chains of the past, we cut the chain from our end, and the other person then has an opportunity to deal with that from their end. But whilst we can hold on to unforgiveness, we can maintain those energetic chains to the past and to other people, and forgiveness is the only thing that can cut those chains. It's the only thing that can break the patterns that we may have inherited from the past through our families, in order to liberate ourselves and give other people the opportunity to do the same. Now, lastly, Scorpio is also about our relationship with power, and especially in one-to-one dynamics. So this is also an opportunity to observe, how do we interact with other people, and what kind of power dynamics do we engage in? Do we continue to engage in power plays of any kind? It may not be about domination or anything like that, but if we're engaged in a fight to control things rather than allowing things to naturally unfold, then this can be a key area that leads to a lot of conflict in relationships. So Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio also asks us to evaluate how we go about realizing what our attitude is when it comes to control. Do we try and control other people, or do we recognize control for the illusion it is? Because at the end of the day, we look at the world around us, we can't control the process around it, we can't make things happen any faster, we can't make projects mature faster. At the allotment, we can't make the plants produce fruit any faster than they normally do. Everything has its own natural cycle. So with Jupiter in Scorpio, this is also time for looking at how can we develop greater patience, how can we become more understanding with one another, and how can we develop greater self-understanding and understanding of our own power drives, so that we can engage with other people consciously and see how we can work together with other people in a way that's mutually empowering. So Scorpio deals with these power dynamics, whether it's two people who behave like children, who throw hissy fits or try and commit acts of vengeance on one another, or do we have the parent-child dynamic, which is represented by the eagle in Scorpio. So with the eagle, it's flying above things and recognising the patterns. This is where we're looking. So in parent-child dynamic, this would be where you got mature adult with someone who continues to be immature and continues to engage in power plays, and it's being the bigger person or being the adult in that interaction, and not allowing the ego to undermine things or engage in power plays, and not engage in juvenile behaviour. But lastly, we have the Phoenix, and this is where we learn to have, where two people learn to engage with one another as adults, where each person respects the other person and appreciates the fact that if we want to empower ourselves, it's important we also help to empower other people. So it's learning to overcome that belief that more for them is less for me. It's understanding that the more we give of ourselves, or truly give of ourselves, and share our personal resources, and the more both parties do that together, so each party wants to elevate the other person, and this creates a very powerful dynamic in the relationship of mutual empowerment, where each person becomes stronger and both people achieve at the same rate. So neither person is growing at the expense of the other. Both parties are being encouraged to grow, both parties are being encouraged to bloom and become the best version, most empowered version of ourselves. Because the more empowered we are, the more we can dive to the personal ego and understand how we're a part of the greater whole. So with Jupiter in Scorpio, this is an opportunity, and with it being retrograde, this is an opportunity for us to transform the dynamics we have with other people and to become spiritual adults. So we no longer engage in juvenile power plays, we no longer seek to control other people through fear. We realise through learning to love ourselves and through accepting our own shadow and transforming it, that we already are powerful. The true power lies within us, and if we can empower ourselves, we then become an example for others to empower themselves. And ideally, as this happens, people start working together through a model of mutual empowerment, so both parties seek the best for the other person and keeps going in a cycle of growth that expands outward and outwards and produces a very powerful dynamic of empowerment for both parties. And this then enables empowered relationships between people where the old power dynamics die, they're let go of, and truly loving relationships where both parties are honoured equally, both parties encouraged to be the best versions of themselves and to honour that divine spark within, and both parties understand that the power lies at the core of each other, and by sharing this power with one another we can achieve things which are not possible for one person to do alone. By learning to share and to give unconditionally through surrendering the need to control, we can become far more powerful agents of change. We can become far more effective at what we're doing, and we also become a shining example for other people to emulate if they choose to. So it's learning to embody transformation rather than just talking about it or preaching about it, because talking and preaching does nothing at the end of the day. Okay, we have a mental understanding of things, but if we don't actually engage in the hard work of achieving at the core of our being and then becoming an embodiment of that transformative energy that empowers the people around us through our example rather than through our words, then we can become the best versions of ourselves and inspire others. So Jupiter retrograde is a very good opportunity for us to transform ourselves through renewing our minds, through letting go of the past and emptying the mind of stuff that no longer matters, but we've held on to subconsciously for one reason or another. And it's an opportunity for us to become the most empowered version of ourselves through letting go of beliefs around forgiveness where we think it's weakness, and embracing the power of forgiveness to transform our relationship with the past, so that all the energy that we've had stored in our relationship with the past is liberated and brought into the present moment to bear upon the present moment. And this then enables us to create a better future through taking conscious action in the present moment. So there's a lot to take on board there, but Jupiter retrograde is a very powerful opportunity for us all to liberate ourselves from our past, to make our unconscious mind conscious, and let go of old dysfunctional emotional patterns and behaviours and beliefs that stop us from growing. And by letting go of these, we release the shackles of the past, we liberate ourselves to go forwards and become the most powerful and effective versions of ourselves we can be. But this isn't power over the people, this is true power that radiates from the core of who we are, through surrendering the illusion of control, through surrendering the need to have things happen our own way, and to embrace the wisdom of letting the flow guide us, to surrender the need to control things and instead let wisdom guide us rather than the conditioned ego. Because by letting wisdom guide us and through listening to our conscience and our moral compass, we can then know for definite that what we're doing is right, is correct for who we are, it honours who we are, but it's also honest. And by doing this, we naturally build integrity for ourselves. We naturally build that self-respect that encourages us to do the right thing, to do things which may be scary, may force us to face certain fears and challenges, but in the long run will bring about significant transformation of the mind through releasing old beliefs, old painful patterns, and using the power of forgiveness to liberate ourselves. So may Jupiter retrograde in Scorpio bring you much awareness, much growth and much transformation, and may it bring you many blessings. Take care.